welcome to our Earth Charter Earth Day event. I want to say that here in Costa Rica, it's a beautiful sunny day, very warm. It's the beginning of spring in the Northern Hemisphere where we are, but here in Costa Rica, we see this as the end of our dry season and almost the beginning of the rainy season. So our Earth Day event today is organized around the theme of nurturing our capacity to care for Earth, our home, and its community of life through education. Let me share that today we are going to have a meeting in 2 languages, English and Spanish. And if you only speak one of these languages, you can select the circle in the bottom bar of your Zoom window. You can select the language that you wish, if it's English or Spanish. Este evento va a ser en inglés y español. Y si usted solamente habla español, le invito a que seleccione en donde está el circulito la palabra español o Spanish para que usted pueda escuchar solamente en español. So as I mentioned, this event will count with a translation in English and Spanish. So you just need to select the language of your choice. So this Earth Day event, nurturing our capacity to care for Earth, our home, and its community of life through education, is going to be a special occasion for all of us to stop and think about the meaning of Earth, our home, and how we are relating with it, and how we are caring for it as our home through our actions and decisions. I would like to start by inviting all of you who are joining us today to think about the uniqueness of our planet Earth. What's the uniqueness of planet Earth? Given that Earth has about 4.5 billion years, and the first photo of Earth, it seems that it was either in 1946, a photo that was taken from the space, which gives this beautiful image of our home. But the most famous blue marble photo that gives this beautiful view of Earth was also seems to have taken in 1972. But what I want to think about is what was the image in the minds of people 100 years ago of Earth, if they had not seen that photo, given that they had not seen that photo. In what has changed in our mindsets, in our generation, that now we can have this picture of the image of Earth in our minds. So I'm going to invite our audience to share in the chat box your name, where you're located, and really welcome the audience, but also invite you to share in the chat box. What do you think is the uniqueness of our planet Earth? And how do you feel about this? How do you feel about Earth, our home? So for this year, Earth Day Network identified the theme, invest in our planet. And we ask ourselves, what could be the best way to invest in our planet? I ask you also to share in the chat box, if you can, what do you think are the best way to invest in our planet? Some weeks ago, when we were planning this event, we thought that wouldn't education be a great way to, or maybe the best way to invest in our planet? But not any kind of education, but an education that really fosters our human capacity to care for Earth, to care for one another and the community of life. In the Earth Charter preamble, we find a sentence that says, Earth, our home, is alive with a unique community of life. And the whole worldview articulated in the Earth Charter is centered on an ethic of care and respect for the community of life. So for this event, we have invited 4 speakers to help us look at this essential role that education may play in supporting this process of expanding our consciousness towards Earth, our home, and in the need to foster more caring societies. So I want to welcome Victoria, who is joining us from Nigeria. Victoria Ibiwoye. She's the founder of OneAfricanChild Foundation. Thank you, Victoria, for joining us today. Bernard Cohn from France, who is program specialist of education for sustainable development in the education sector at UNESCO. Sam Crowell, who is joining us from the US in Vermont. He's a member of the ECI Council and a faculty member of the ECI Center for Education for Sustainable Development. Sam is the co-author of a book that has inspired me quite a lot. It's a book called Emergent Teaching, A Path of Creativity, Significance, and Transformation. I think that book is quite inspiring, Sam. And Sam has also been part of our online certificate on education for sustainable development since its conception. And I also have the pleasure of welcoming Leonardo Boff, who is joining us from Petrópolis, Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Leonardo is a theologian, philosopher, writer. He's a member of the Earth Charter Commission. He was part of the drafting process of the Earth Charter, and he's the author of over 70 books. I lost count of it, but certainly one of the books that he wrote is Knowing How to Care, which in English is actually translated as Essential Care. But he's also very well known for this English book that was translated in Cry of the Earth, Cry of the Poor. So thank you so much. Yes, in English. So it's very interesting because both,
en español es así, cuidar de la tierra.
Cuidar de la tierra. Aquí tengo también. Cuidar de la tierra. So you have been thinking about this notion of care for Earth for many years. And of course, you have shared a lot of your thoughts on your book. So thank you so much, each one of you, for being here. And I would like to start by asking our speakers here, starting with Leonardo, and then we go to Victoria. And I think it's to ask you to share with us, what do you think is the uniqueness of our planet Earth? Leonardo, what is the uniqueness of our planet Earth?
Buenos días a todos y a todas, especialmente a Miriam, que es una excepcional secretaria desde el principio de la elaboración de la Carta de la Tierra. Quiero saludar a todos los que están siguiendo nuestro programa. Yo creo que Miriam ha dado el punto esencial, llamado the Overview Effect, la mirada de la Tierra fuera de la Tierra. Y ahí tenemos el testimonio muy importante de Asimov, que al celebrar los 25 años de la aventura espacial, la revista Time le pidió un artículo y él dijo 3 cosas importantes. Desde las naves espaciales no hay diferencia entre tierra y humanidad. Es una unidad. Segundo, que crece en nosotros la conciencia de que pertenecemos a la tierra, que somos tierra. Y el tercero, que debemos cuidar de ese pequeño y bello planeta Tierra. Y exactamente es el tema de hoy, porque hay varias amenazas sobre el sistema Tierra y el sistema vida. La más peligrosa y que no queremos ni pensar sería una guerra nuclear, porque estamos dentro de una guerra. Entonces sería 1 más 1 igual a 0. Uno destruye el otro y la humanidad se va. Chomsky dice que hay suficientes locos en el Pentágono que quieren así una guerra nuclear. Esse é um problema, o mais grave, eu creio, que é o cambio de regime climático, o aquecimento global, o calentamento global. Hemos passado já o ponto crítico. Já não há retorno. A Terra ha cambiado e a técnica e a ciência não pode evitarlo. Pode solamente minorar los efectos dañinos. Pero la Tierra ha cambiado y va a cambiar rápidamente de régimen climático. El otro es la sobrecarga de la Tierra, the Earth Overshoot. Es decir, necesitamos hoy para el consumo de la humanidad, pero de las poblaciones opulentas que tienen un consumo suntuoso, necesitamos de una tierra y media, es decir, la tierra ya no aguanta, y porque es un superorganismo vivo, responde con virus, con calentamiento global, con huracanes, con cambios climáticos extremos, es la manera como la tierra viva reacciona a todo eso. Entonces, esas amenazas nos invitan a cuidar de la tierra. Y la Carta de la Tierra creo que fue el primer gran documento. Había unos pequeños de la ONU que habla del care, del cuidado de la tierra. Estamos en un momento crítico, se empieza así, de la historia de la tierra, y que está ligado a nuestro futuro. Y la solución es hacer un pacto, una alianza de cuidado de unos a otros y de la tierra. Al contrario, asistiremos a la destrucción de la diversidad de la vida y nuestra destrucción. Entonces necesitamos del cuidado.
Gracias, Leonardo. Victoria. Victoria, thank you for being here. Can you share with us what you think is the uniqueness of our planet Earth?
Thank you, Miriam. I'm really excited to be here, and thanks to Leonardo for laying the background. I think there are so many uniqueness when we think about planet Earth, and some of the things that really amazes me is the complexity and vastness of the Earth that we live in and the planet that we share. It's so complex, it's so huge. It's really something that, you know, science is still unraveling. Every day there are new discovery about, you know, trying to find out about all of the you know, beautiful innovation that is in our earth. Another thing is about the diversity in terms of countries, in terms of languages, in terms of religion, in terms of food, in terms of the weather, and the list goes on and on. This is what really makes the planet Earth very beautiful. And finally is the fact that Earth is live, or life is Earth. So when we think about we as human beings, we have life, but we are not the only ones with life on planet Earth. We also have plants who have life. We have animals. We have the oceans and all of those which all have life. It is important that when we think about the Earth, we need to give dignity to, you know, all of these beautiful creations that have life. We need to nurture our trees. We need to give respect to the water, to life on land, life below water, life below land, and life above land. So these are the things that really amazes me about the uniqueness of the Earth that we all share.
Thank you, Victoria. Bernard Combe, what do you think is the uniqueness and the beauty of this planet?
Well, Victoria already has mentioned the diversity of spaces on Earth, diversity of people on Earth, of species on Earth. I think I would say you were asking earlier, you know, you said the picture of taken in 1972 or 1940 something, you know, how did people think about the Earth? I think there we have to think about, go back in history. When we read the text from the Roman period, travel was, I can walk, so many 20, 25 kilometers, maybe 30 kilometers in a day, and that's my distance. So walking from Rome to the other side, to the farthest border of the Roman Empire was more than several weeks of travel. Nowadays, Rome to the other side is a couple of hours on a plane. So we have changed our vision of distances, which at the same time has brought us closer, because suddenly the Earth was much smaller. You can fly around the world in 40 hours, more or less. Great, but we have also, I think one thing that we have lost a little bit is the connection between each of us. Because partly the beauty of the Earth is through this diversity, coming up with solutions to see what is there, this thing of discovering. Where can I go to find out more? I think that's part of the beauty. I think the other part of the beauty is that there's still some parts of the Earth that are still unexplored because they're a little too far, for way down at the bottom of the ocean. There's still so many things to discover. And way up on the other part, there's also so many things to discover. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff to discover within ourselves. And within, you mentioned education as a means, a way to advance, to, let's say, show this diversity, this uniqueness. Yes, it's there, but I would say here I will quote my patron saint, Saint Bernard de Clairvaux, who said basically you need to go out. You need to go out into the forest. You will find more in woods than in books, and trees and stones will teach you what you can never learn from masters. Basically, education, yes, but education has to be linked with what's happening outside. Education, basically, yes, we want to talk about the uniqueness of the Earth, about the different geological spaces, biomes. You have to go out there. You have to go see them. We want to talk about that diversity. We need to be inclusive. There again, we have to go talk to the other people, whether they're teachers, whether they're young people, old people, doesn't matter the age. I think the importance, the uniqueness is to keep in mind that education basically should be about learning. It should not be about grades and that at the end of so many years there's an exam and you have to pass that exam to go beyond. Forget all that. Education is about learning. It's a lifelong process. It happens all the time with anybody, everybody. We're all potentially educators. So I think the Earth Day should be a day to celebrate all this diversity in all its forms, and that education is also about art and creativity, about poetry, about literature. And we're talking about sustainability, but you can talk about sustainability through many different ways, including music, songs, dance, the diversity of cultural expressions. This is my little take on that.
Thank you, Bernard. Sam Crowell, what do you think is the uniqueness of our planet Earth?
Well, I'm already inspired by everyone else's comments, so thank you all, and thank everyone for being here as well. Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind with that question, Miriam, is we're stardust come to life. And not just humans, but this entire planet, the life and the awe and wonder of life itself, the enchanted world that we are part of and we share and we're connected to. That's it's an amazing thing. And so I'm just, you know, as I even think about it, there's such a feeling of humility there that somehow I'm in this world existing and a part of and connected with a belonging that I can't really explain. And it's just incredibly inspiring. And it should be the basis, that sense of enchantment and wonder and awe should be the basis of any kind of education, any kind of dialogue. I'm aware too that we've abbreviated our planet's name. Our planet's name, Earth, from I much prefer the Latin roots. Terra Matri was the name for Earth, and that's Mother Earth, Mother Land, Mother Soil. So it's somehow by calling something Earth, we've given it a name, but it's the soil and the humus of nature. So I brought some soil here and the seeds. So I wanted to just reenact the planting into this soil that somehow a little seed will come to life if I show care and nurture it as it nurtures me. And as we create this reciprocal and mutual understanding and relationship with the diversity of the worlds and the diversity of forms around us. So Tierra Madre, the mother, that which brings things to life, that produces, that nurtures, the feminine. I think we've lost that understanding of what the feminine aspect of care and nurturance and life-giving creativity has been about in place of achievement and production and consumption. So returning in a sense to focus on the diversity of life experience to me is something that's incredibly, incredibly important. And I'll stop here, but I want to put out something else that educationally, as we think about education, that which comes from the inside, how do we relate to this earth, this mother, this life-giving force that's around us? How do we take the awe and the wonder that we feel a part of and infuse it into the spirit and nature of what we do and what we decide to learn? So maybe we need to refocus the educational aspect of what we're about. We've been focusing on that production and achievement for much too long, rather than the nurturance and the care and the enchantment of life. And so the word focus, I'll end with this. If we go back to the etymology of focus, it has an image. I love images and words. It simply means the hearth of a home where the family gathers, or the fire in which we sit around in the evening and focus our attention on and tell our stories and create the diversity of expression together in community and in harmony with who we are. So when we focus on home, on hearth, on family, on the land that we are part of and that constitutes who we are, then we have a place to start a really deep and important conversation for the future of our time and the future of this planet, Mother Earth.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you, each one of you. I was also reading some of the comments that we can find here in the chat box, and I find it amazing. And I see that many of you, those 4 speakers we just heard, mentioned the beauty of diversity, diversity in cultures, diverse contexts. I would add ecosystems and even life forms. It's one of the beauties and the uniqueness of our planet. But there are a number of things that we take for granted, such as oxygen. Oxygen is something that is quite unique from our planet and that we all share independently of our cultures and where we come from. Watching a rainbow, a waterfall, our oceans and waves and hummingbirds, and just the beauty of seeing the moon, the full moon, our uniqueness, I would say, of what we can experience in this planet. So let me bring just the voice of 3 people here that are in our audience that I saw in the chat box. We have many comments in the chat box. One is from Giovanni Blanco from Costa Rica. And Giovanni says, para mí, la Madre Tierra es la fuente de energía vital más cercana que tenemos. La inversión más grande que podemos hacer es reconectarnos con esa energía. Gracias, Giovanni. He is joining us from Costa Rica. Marlet, who is joining us from Ethiopia. Marlet says the uniqueness of Earth is peaceful biodiversity and how one living thing does not only support, but is essential for the other living thing sustainably. And John Anderson, who is joining us from Japan. And thank you, John. I know it's very late in Japan. Our connections with each other and with every aspect and diverse manifestation of life are what makes this planet so unique and wonderful. Thank you, John, and thank you all of you who are inviting us to think about the importance of being in awe and not take for granted many of the elements of our beautiful planet. So I'm gonna go back and ask Leonardo Boff to share with us his thoughts on what he thinks is needed. What do you think, Leonardo, is needed for us to have a more caring society, people who are concerned with the well-being of all life on planet and Earth? What do we need to do to foster a more caring society? Leonardo?
Sí. Yo creo que debemos superar la forma clásica de la enseñanza en las escuelas. Como decía Jacques Delors de la UNESCO, que los desafíos del siglo XXI sería aprender a conocer, a pensar, a vivir y a convivir, pero yo creo que eso ya no basta. Tenemos que entendernos como ciudadanos planetarios, no solamente ciudadanos americanos o brasileños o costarriqueños, sino que estamos dentro de una misma casa común. Y yo creo que la lección del coronavirus nos ha mostrado que las fronteras nacionales son obsoletas. Él no respetó las fronteras, afectó todo el planeta, toda la humanidad y solo la humanidad. Para decir, somos una unidad, hablando en términos de una cosmogénesis, en estilo de Brian Swimme y de otros, nosotros somos la Tierra que en un dado momento de su desarrollo, de su complejidad, empezó a sentir, a pensar, a amar, a cuidar, y ahí irrumpió el hombre y la mujer. Entonces somos tierra, tierra que piensa. Y ahora más que todo, yo creo que hay que añadir en la educación un sentido ético global de responsabilidad por la casa común. una ética de la tierra. Y ahí junto a eso, me gustó mucho lo que Miriam señaló, hay que reconectarnos con el planeta Tierra. Es decir, hacer un lazo afectivo, con la tierra, con los biomas, con los árboles, con los animales, y entendernos efectivamente como una gran comunidad de vida, para usar una expresión de la Carta de la Tierra. O como el Papa Francisco lo dice muy bien, somos todos hermanos y hermanas, no solamente por la mística de San Francisco de Asís, sino por un dato científico. Yo por acaso tengo el libro aquí de Watson, sobre el DNA, el que junto con Crick descodificó el código genético, se dio cuenta que desde la célula más originaria de 3,8 mil millones de años, pasando por los grandes bosques, los dinosaurios, por los caballos y llegando a nosotros, tenemos la misma base biológica, los mismos 20 aminoácidos y las mismas 4 bases nitrogenadas o fosfatadas. Es decir, somos de hecho, como dato científico, somos hermanos y hermanas, somos hechos por las mismas sustancias. Entonces, un lazo de fraternidad nos une a todos y a todas, pero no basta con decir esto. Tenemos que sentirlo, tenemos que pasar de la cabeza, que es la razón instrumental analítica, a la razón sensible del corazón. Eso de la cabeza tiene como 8 o 9 millones de años. La razón cordial tiene como 220 millones de años. Cuando irrumpieron los mamíferos tienen el cerebro límbico que siente, que cuida, que ama. Nosotros no somos animales racionales, somos mamíferos racionales. Entonces tenemos el cuidado, el amor con las cosas. Y hay que unir corazón y cabeza. Eso lo hemos perdido en la modernidad. Solamente hemos desarrollado la cabeza hasta crear el principio de autodestrucción con armas químicas, biológicas y nucleares. Esa es la razón enloquecida, la razón irracional. Pero si añadimos, si enriquecemos esa razón con la razón sensible, la razón cordial, donde está la afectividad, la empatía, la ética, la espiritualidad, si unimos eso, tenemos condiciones de establecer lazos de fraternidad, de cuidado con todos los seres, porque todo lo que vive y todo lo que existe merece vivir, merece existir, y ahí podemos tener futuro. Caso contrario, solamente con la razón vamos al encuentro de lo peor. Es el corazón que va a salvarnos. Y el lazo afectivo, la reconexión con todos los seres, sintiéndonos juntos en la casa común. Aún somos todos africanos, vinimos de África, ocupamos todos los espacios, ahora volvemos y nos encontramos en un único lugar, que es el planeta Tierra. Entonces es un planeta dentro del cual hay muchos mundos culturales, europeos, chinos, de India, de los indígenas. Son los varios mundos que conviven dentro de la misma casa común. Entonces, yo creo que estamos a la aurora de esta realidad. Los datos están ahí, pero no hemos creado la conciencia de eso, ni las prácticas efectivas, los comportamientos que cambian nuestra relación con la naturaleza, y ahí la posibilidad de salvar a ella y salvarnos a nosotros.
Wow. Gracias, Leonardo. Hay que unir corazón y cabeza y cultivar no solamente nuestra capacidad de razonar, pero también nuestra capacidad de sentir. Gracias por recordarnos y reafirmar. Mark Hathaway is also part of our audience here. Mark Hathaway co-authored the book with Leonardo Boff called The Tao of Liberation. And Mark, with that question, said, this sense of recognition is key to motivating and inspiring action. This sense of recognition. We need to be motivated out of love, awe, beauty, and a great sense of care and empathy rather than by fear or guilt. Love alone has the energy to sustain us. Thank you, Mark Hathaway, for your contribution here to this conversation. Sam, can I give it back to you now and call for you to share with us what you think is most needed for us to have a more caring global society?
Well, I think I will start with heart. That's been mentioned quite a bit already. El corazón. If we start from the heart, we start to tap into who we are and our intuitive sense of what care is all about. We care from the heart, and from the heart, the action goes to our hands and to our physicality in the world. So caring and action are a combined set of practices. So the starting is of the heart, I think, and becoming consciously aware of that part of our being. And, you know, it's not that heart is just full of emotion, it's also full of neurons. So there are neurons in the heart, there are neurons in the gut, there are neurons in the brain. And so it isn't just something not to think with. Many languages don't even have a word for heart or brain. Their word is heart-mind. So if we memorize something, we talk in English about memorizing by heart, or I know this with all my heart. So the heart is that center that where emotions and intellect and feelings from the gut, those intuitions, all come together. And if we block that, we have two nerves on the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves that go up to the brain. And when those are disturbed, we cannot think and problem solve and create solutions for complex problems and issues. When we relax into the heart, when that heart is filled with love and care and nourishment, then those are very, very different. We're actually able to come up with 30 to 40% more solutions than we are when our brain is filled with fear and with apprehension. And so we're entering a stage in this world where we are filled with fear and apprehension. The conditions and the context of life in this world are very much threatened. And on the very first line, the very first sentence of the Earth Charter, says we stand at a critical moment in Earth's history, a time when humanity must choose its future. So we are in that existential time as a human species. And that time is we have the ability to choose. We have the ability to make choices for our lives and our actions and the way we are with others and with ourselves. And so when we start to choose, we are reminded very, very deliberately, again, by the Earth Charter, that we are one human family and one Earth community. And because we are one human family and one earth community, we're bound together. We're bound together in a common destiny. And so the matter of choice extends into the conversation today about education. We need to choose the kind of education that's going to lead us with the heart. If we keep having an education that is up here, the choices, the fear, the apprehension, and the shutting down of the expanse of solutions will become shorter and shorter. It's here and based in love for the earth, for ourselves, and for society and others, that we have a chance to gather together with solutions and choices that are grounded in the values of kindness and care.
Thank you, Sam, for sharing this. You just mentioned about Earth community, and it's very interesting because just before you mentioned that, Mateo Castillo, who is joining us from Mexico, wrote in the chat box in Spanish, "Más que una familia humana, somos una comunidad terrestre, con todo lo que existe y vive." Gracias, Mateo Castillo, que nos acompaña de México. And it seems to me that hearing you, Sam, and also Mateo and others comment in the chat box, what needs to be done is to cultivate the sense of consciousness and feeling that we are really part of a human and community, an earth community, which it seems that in most of our upbringing, experience through education, formal, non-formal, that sense of earth community is not necessarily well nurtured or cultivated. Okay, so let's move on. May I invite Victoria? Can you come to the floor to share what do you think is needed for us to have a more caring global society? Victoria.
Thanks, Miriam. What I really love about this event for me is also the sense of intergenerational dialogue. I come from a background of working with young people and being a young person myself, and I've been taking so much notes, learning from Sam, Leonardo, Bernard. So I really do appreciate your perspective and insight a lot. I think for me, it's the idea that if we take care of the earth will in turn take care of us. So when you think about the fact that we have to have a soil that is very rich in order to have a good harvest, if the soil is not well nurtured, if it's not rich, it's going to show forth in the type of harvest that we have. So this is the mindset that we need to look at when we think about the earth. We shouldn't just look at the earth with a sense of not caring or doing whatever we like. If we nurture the earth, if we take care of the earth, in turn it comes back to take care of us. And this begins with having a shift in perspective. Everything really begins, like Leonardo and Sam has said, it begins with our mindset, it begins with our hearts, but it's also about what are we willing to do too. It's not about having the arts, it also goes beyond that to wanting to take action. And when I think of what is missing, I think that we really need more earth awareness curriculum, and we also need to empower teachers as well. Growing up in Nigeria, I never really bothered to learn more about, how can we nurture the earth, because the curriculum did not cover all of these important topics. Anything that I've learned have been things that I learned from my community, from growing up in the family unit, from going to church, from the religious background. So I do think that our education system needs to cover more earth awareness curriculums, and also to empower educators on how to deliver these curriculums. And for us at One African Child, what we do with our programming is to focus on facilitation. The idea of facilitating also involves engaging the learner in the learning process, making sure that the learning is experiential, is experimental, that the learners feel involved. And it is in this process that learning becomes lifelong. They go home and they can tell their parents, this was what we did today. We went outside to the garden, we planted a seed, and this was what we learned from this exercise. And also when it comes to our mindsets, it's important to think about important values like gratitude, being very grateful for the little things, for the air we breathe, like you talked about earlier, Marianne, being able to, smell the rain, being able to enjoy, the different seasons of life. When it's sunny, we are thankful. When it's raining, we are thankful. It's also about meditation, our relationship with the earth. We should embrace the earth with a sense of meditation and gratitude. It's about other values like empathy, grace, perspective, resilience, open-mindedness, connection, like Bernard said, humility, cultural humility, intellectual humility, understanding that the persons near us has so much to share, not feeling like we are the best with the best idea in the world. It's also about celebration. So celebrating, the little things of life. So I'm very happy that we are gathered here to celebrate, Earth Day. So for now, I would stop here and give the floor to others.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you for sharing also what you're doing there in Nigeria with your foundation, and the importance to work on earth awareness, the awareness of earth in our heads and hearts. And I'm glad to hear you're already doing that. Bernard, what do you think is needed for us to have a more caring society? And maybe given that you're working with UNESCO for so many years, if you can already share with us briefly, Bernard, what is UNESCO doing to reorient education to address some of these things already, some of these challenges? Bernard Combe.
Okay, I'll try and give you a little summary. But first, I'll just react to a few things that have been said. Leonardo was talking about DNA, made me think of a book I read recently, which is called The Odyssey of Genes. Basically, it's looking at the genes and the DNA samples from all over the world and retracing where people went and why they went there and how things evolved. It is, as you said, part of our humanity, our connection. Victoria gave us a long list of, let's say, values, qualities. I would add one very important value, I think, in terms of education, is the value of respect. Respect for oneself, respect for others, respect for other species, respect for our planet, respect for basically everything around us. And you were talking about basically building Earth consciousness. I saw in the chat somebody mentioning emotional intelligence, which I would say there's also environmental intelligence. And there again, there's a diversity of intelligence. Some of us are excellent at singing and making music. Others are totally lost if you put them in a forest. We all have these different abilities that we need to, in a way, juggle with. Sam talked about the heart, the mind, the hands. I think in education, one of the things we're trying to do at UNESCO in some of our education programs is to balance all three of those so that one doesn't overtake the other two, so that you have a kind of a balanced approach in terms of thinking about transforming, changing education, moving to lifelong learning, intergenerational learning that takes into account the realities of the world outside, but also the realities of what's up here. I mean, the COVID and all this talk about climate change and droughts and fires has created a lot of anxiety among people. And so we have to find a way to balance and say, okay, look outside, you got a tree, you got some flowers, you know, look at the positive to get away from the more negative. As I said, as I quoted Saint Bernard de Clairvaux, you know, go out. The importance of outdoor learning. Outdoor learning should not just be go out and learn about nature. Outdoor learning is also, you go to the market, you find out, you know, what people are selling, how, why, you ask questions. This is something one of my grandma taught me. She sold fish on the market. And she said, you know, you go and you find out, you know, what is the fish really fresh? Here are a few hints, you know, where did it come from? So yeah, we have to go out there. Some of the transforming is getting people to think that education, you need to have, of course, the people in the ministries, the curriculum developers, but you need the teachers in the conversation, you need the students, you need the parents, and you need the community around your school to discuss what should be, you know, what should be the important things to learn about. And I think some of the actions that we are doing in terms of education for sustainable development is reconnecting to the local level. We get these global problems, global issues, reconnect them to the local level. We are now doing a lot of work with UNESCO sites, the UNESCO World Heritage sites, the geoparks, the biosphere reserves. These are places where you can learn about sustainability and you can actually talk to people who, in some cases, have been doing sustainability for thousands of years without anything modern. No, no cell phone, iPhone 55 and all that kind of thing. It works. You do not need to be more creative than that. We have the advantage of having these places. And where I'm currently co-leading a program where we actually focusing on that, forcing our field offices to find these sites, find schools that are there, and saying, look at what is being done and use those sites to teach, to learn, to discuss, so that we can actually move beyond. And just to, in a way, synthesize that, I'm sorry, I'll quote someone else again, Saint-Exupéry, the one who wrote The Little Prince. In it, he says, it is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. So our education needs to actually look for that invisible part, which in part is, as we've been talking about, is this human connection, this interaction between people, this common humanity. But it's also, as I said earlier, there's still some places that need to be explored on our planet Earth because they're a little more difficult to reach. But also this invisible thing is also the current discussions around artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and all those kind of things. That invisible part, we also need to talk about it, especially when it's linked to technology. We're so lucky to have Zoom so we can all talk, but we need to talk about that. I would say the other part of the transforming is that it's very easy to talk about, this is what should change, but actually it means that we have to change the system. You see it all the time when you're talking about plastics or waste. Oh, suddenly there's a new bin where you can put your plastic. But if those who bring you the bin haven't thought of the system to take care of getting rid or recycling the plastic, you can put it in the bin, but then in the end, it might just end up in the same dump site. So we have the system needs to be rethought. Same with education. We had the Transforming Education Summit in New York. Many countries made commitments and say, but until you change the system, until you push for that change in the system, some of this will not really happen. You'll have enthusiastic, dynamic teachers or ministers of education that will say, yes, we can do that, but you need to look at the whole structure, which is the problem we often have. We think that education and the education system is something in a way simple. Actually, it's very, very complex, because beside the teachers, beside the ministry people, you also often have the local government or the regional government or the federal or the national government in it. And we need to learn to deal with these interactions. And so in part, transforming education means that we need to restart a dialogue, a conversation between all the stakeholders, all the people around. We need to go back to, as Leonardo mentioned, he mentioned Delors, the Delors report. A lot of what is written there is some things we still need to do. We need to go back to the basics, learning to do, learning to know, learning to be, learning to transform. And then we need to add learning to care for ourselves, for others, for the environment around us, and including invisible species.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you for sharing this thought that it's not easy to change the system. When we talk about education system, it has different layers, different actors. It's huge. And thank you for sharing with us a flavor or a few things of the many that UNESCO is doing to transform education. One being the Transforming Education Summit held last year, and this effort that you mentioned that that is taking place of going to schools and guiding schools to look at the World Heritage Sites and learn from that. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm coming back again with this question and asking Victoria, because we would like to have some illustration of a very specific context and a few steps that are taking place in addressing that, in addressing reorienting education towards a more ecologically literate citizens. Can you share with us, Victoria, from your perspective, what's going on in the efforts that you have been galvanizing?
Thanks, Miriam. For the past few months or years, we've been focusing on social and emotional learning, because we think that is still not being stressed enough. I mean, a lot of people, when it comes to education, we are talking about the aspects where the world is changing. We need to move along with technology and all of the advancements. But what about, those important values and behaviors, mindsets that we need to instill in learners? I think, that technology would always continue to advance, but values are for a lifetime. They are going to be there with us for a lifetime. So this is why we've been focusing on social and emotional learning in our program. And we've also been approaching our work with the idea of the role of the teacher, the educator, is to guide and not necessarily to teach, to just offload information on the learners, but to guide the learning process, to make sure that the critical thinking, the curiosity, the creativity, and the innovation is coming right from the learners themselves. So a lot of what we do is built around experiential learning, connecting education, like many of the other panelists have said, to the heart, to the hands, and to the mind. Those are very important. We need a combination of all of of those. It's also in how we are engaging young people in our work too. A lot of the youth in our work are also serving as advocates. They are raising awareness about all of these important issues, like the Transforming Education Summit was recently held. The role of young people in these conversations are super critical, because the world that we are experiencing today is far different from what the world was like a century ago or even a decade ago. The world is constantly changing. And when we think about the needs of the 21st century, we also need to think about who are those who are experiencing that now. You know, the world that we are going to live for the children today is already not in a very healthy place, and we need to do much more better. A conversation around earth awareness, climate sustainability, we need more and more advocacy, we need action, we need political commitment too. A lot of the changes that need to be done would be much more faster if leaders will stop just saying the same thing over and again, but actually, you know, puts their money where the mouth is, you know, back the commitments by political action. Because a lot of things we need are around capacity building. We need capacity building for educators, but also looking at education holistically, not just training educators, but training the whole school system approach, training the different stakeholders that are involved in building these ecological, sustainable societies. We need to think about religious leaders. We need to think about, you know, parents, particularly women or mothers. They play a critical role in inculcating and building the right values and skill sets. But we need a lot of capacity building for all of these different stakeholders, and we need to realize or recognize that it takes a village. So this is what we do in One African Child. It's really looking at the different stakeholders and meeting people where they are at in our work.
Thank you, Victoria. So I understand that you're already doing a lot of these things that you're saying that needs to be done in terms of training and enhancing the capacity of young people and also educators to rethink education through these lenses of care and sustainability and global citizenship. So I know that you're doing a lot in terms of reaching out to schools and educators and young people in Nigeria. So I just want to express my appreciation for the efforts that you are doing concretely to reorient that challenge towards a better situation in terms of education. I want to bring the voice of two other people who are here with us today in our audience. One is Silvia Arieta, who is at the Universidad Técnica Nacional de Costa Rica, que dice: la integración espiritual para la conexión de la tierra es algo fundamental para que nos pueda ayudar a abordar eso en cuanto a la pregunta de qué debemos hacer para tener una sociedad global con mayor sentido de cuidado. Y Rosalia López, que nos dice: el reto que tenemos es construirnos una otra modernidad que una razón y razón, basada en una ética de la tierra, como propone Leonardo Boff, ya que es nuestra casa común. Gracias, Rosalia. Now I'm going to go back to Leonardo and Sam. Bernard Kong and Victoria shared with us a little bit of what is being done from UNESCO side and Victoria from her efforts in Nigeria, what's being done in the side of education to address this. But I would like to ask Leonardo and Sam to share your thoughts on the role of values and ethics in reimagining education. What do you think and how do you think that can take place? So it's kind of, okay, we see many documents and actually many talks on the importance of fostering values. But in the reality, it's very hard for us to see that happening. My question to both of you is why do you think that is important, and how could we make that happen? So again, bringing the role of values and ethics in fostering through education this society and humans that are more caring. So can we hear first from maybe Sam and then Leonardo?
Yeah.
That's a big question.
Hay que preguntarse.
Go ahead.
Leonardo, vamos escutar o Sam primeiro.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll try to be brief, but it's hard with that question. I want to take us back, if I could, to even the beginning of the purpose and the mission of even UNESCO, which was actually an education for justice, liberty, and peace. And it extended that. And there was a recognition then that the political and economic arrangements of governments would not be lasting unless there were values. And yet with education, we usually talk about education absent of values. We talk about information, we talk about subjects, we talk about processes, ways to educate. And so we go on, and yes, we want a world of justice, liberty, peace, a world that's ecological in terms of creating a civilization that's ecological and relational. Can we do that without values? I'm not so sure that will happen as long as education is without those values. Let me stay with UNESCO just a little bit, and this isn't a dumping on UNESCO. I love what they're doing. But there were things they could not do. They could not espouse a political or economic doctrine. They could not espouse a philosophical outlook or a state versus individual or a theory of society. There were many things that they could not do. And that is why the Earth Charter becomes so critical and important to that work, because that is what the Earth Charter, in a sense, does. Not so much a political and economic philosophy, but it has a vision. In other words, education is set up to have goals. The Earth Charter is set up and provides a vision. There's a real difference between goals and a vision. A vision pulls you towards something. Most education is set up then with objectives, which are fine. There's nothing wrong with goals and objectives, but the Earth Charter is set up with values. Why are we doing this? What is important? What really matters? That's different from meeting an objective. Most education is set up for outcomes, but the Earth Charter is set up for action, for doing. Most education is centered around achieving and producing, but the Earth Charter's language is being and creating. And so there's a real difference there. Most education is set up for data collection and measurement. The Earth Charter is set up for openness and communication and conversation and dialogue. Those are the things that change. Yes, we need systematic and systemic change, but we won't have that unless we address values. And that's why the Earth Charter, to me, I know I'm getting on the Earth Charter bandwagon here. It's so important, though, for the future of educational change. And I would say that there needs to be a process model. My experience in educational reform has been through process, not through more information or more methodologies. It's saying this is the frame, the container. Let's get together and let's stay in process. Let's create conversation that's ongoing and see, how do we want to bring this to life in our context, in our community, in our classroom. And there are things that are incredibly important around that. One, I think Mateo and another speaker has talked about the spirit. And I don't want to say spirituality is just some abstraction, talking about the inner lives of students, the inner lives of teachers, addressing that with some sense of meaning. And I often say in all of my classes, I can give you information, but I cannot give you meaning. Meaning has to come out of our world, our life world together. And so we have to create community. And what does your inner life, if I can nurture that and nourish that inner life so it comes out and we're in love together, you know, in this world. And so, so I think I have to tout a book that I've just recently done. Satish Kumar, who was the founder of Schumacher College in the UK and Resurgence Magazine, has a wonderful book called Radical Love. And he gives the 3 S's there: soil, love of nature; soul, love of oneself and one's own inner resources; and society, love of others. And he says those 3 are multidimensional and they have to be a part of all kinds of education. We have to get our hands into the earth, into nature, because if we do not address the community of life that includes nature, and we do not start to see ourselves as virtually connected and belonging to that community, then what is our education for? And so by refocusing, by coming together around the hearth and home and seeing ourselves as a family, let's focus education on this notion of the earth and the planet. And so, yes, I'm not so hopeful that disciplinary knowledge bases are going to change overnight, but the focus of it can. If I'm with a group of teachers and in a school and I say, how can we focus what we have to do more around the values that come with living on this planet Earth and sustainability and the nurturance and the thriving that comes with that? What can we do to focus more and still do what we're doing? I'm going to end with 3 things. And these come out of the neurosciences, but they're oriented to education and they work. Orchestrated experience. Orchestrated experience in complexity, in the complex life world. In other words, it could be we have to be in the world, as Bernard was suggesting, as Doria was suggesting, we have to be in the world. Orchestrated immersion in complex experience. But then what's around that? A sense of relaxed alertness. In other words, a sense of well-being, trust, emotional grounding, a sense of love and respect and care that comes out of that and into that immersion. And then constant processing, the active processing of what we're experiencing, of what we're thinking, of what we're questioning, of what we're learning. When those 3 elements are put into a focus of love and care for one another, for the earth and nature, the communities of life, and for the social conditions of equity and justice and care for those who are marginalized in our world, it can work. And at the same time, it can also create those achievement outcomes that everyone else is still looking for. It can also create these other things. I'm not being idealistic here. I've seen it work. I've been in schools, I've helped it work, and it's a holistic vision. And as a holistic educator, the spirit of our inner lives, the relationships with others, the experience of working with our hands, and embodied sense of knowing has to be a part of everything that we do. All of that creates mental and intellectual strength for us. I'm sorry, I get really excited about this, but it's the Earth Charter provides those values. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry, it will not happen absent of values. Sex education it's a sense of value. And we have a vision of what those values are that was carefully curated and gathered. It's just in our hands and we're not using it. It's just the most frustrating thing. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sam. Let's hear Leonardo Boff on what do you think is the role of values and ethics into our education experience. Leonardo.
Sí. Yo agradezco mucho por lo que Sam, Victoria, Bernardo han dicho, he aprendido mucho. Pero si miramos la realidad global, el proceso de planetización que agrada más a los franceses do que globalización, que es muy económica. Planetización es más un proceso cultural, humano, una fase nueva de la Tierra. Mi pregunta básica es, a partir de dónde empezamos a construir esos valores y vivir esa realidad? Yo creo que la totalidad del sistema es totalmente insostenible. Si no cambiamos, vamos al encuentro de lo peor. Pero hay que empezar desde el territorio, Yo creo que las reflexiones más importantes hoy que se hacen en ecología es sobre el bioregionalismo, porque ahí en el territorio, que no es las divisiones artificiales que fueron hechas de los condados y municipios, sino lo que la naturaleza ha hecho, la forma de las montañas, de los bosques, de los ríos, de la fauna y la flora que ahí vive, partiendo del territorio donde viven las personas. Ahí se puede crear una verdadera sostenibilidad y vivir esos valores de los cuales estamos hablando. Porque en el territorio uno empieza a conocer los paisajes, conocer las tradiciones de las poblaciones que han vivido allá, cuáles fueron los grandes poetas o las personas notables, los que han edificado esa región, se sienten parte de esa región. Y como es el territorio, se evita el transporte de los productos, se produce lo que la naturaleza ahí ofrece. A partir de ahí, crear una autonomía, crear una sostenibilidad, y de tal manera que todos pueden ser involucrados y disminuir al máximo la pobreza. Se vive una democracia participativa, una producción agroecológica, respetando los límites de la naturaleza y dando tiempo para que se pueda regenerar y continuar darnos vida. Entonces, crear una unidad que efectivamente puede constituir una especie de tapiz por toda la tierra. Y ahí tenemos una salida posible. Hay hoy 111 ciudades que viven a partir del territorio, a partir de la región. Empezando con los zapatistas, yo lo he visitado, los caracoles de ellos, la autonomía de las regiones, funciona de una forma maravillosa, todo sostenible, una autonomía, no hay excluidos, no hay ricos ni pobres, sino una profunda igualdad, todos se respetan, viven cuidado por la tierra y unos de otros. Entonces es un modelo que es posible en la humanidad. Y la experiencia que yo estoy acompañando ahora y que se hace mucho en las bases de mi país, especialmente de los movimientos de los sin tierra, que involucra a millares de familias, es crear las casas de semilla, las casas de familias criollas. Entonces, porque hay 3, 4 grandes empresas mundiales que controlan las semillas y las hacen transgénicas. Ellos no. Crean en los grupos de base, en todas las partes, las casas donde preservan las semillas criollas nativas y a partir de ahí crean la autonomía de las grandes empresas, de la vinculación con el sistema de los bancos, de la financiación. Y eso en el sentido de preservar la naturaleza, lo que es natural, la semilla, y crear desde ahí una alimentación sana para todos. Y eso se está difundiendo mucho entre nosotros y también en América Latina, porque en la semilla está todo, está la vida, está el tronco, las frutas, el futuro de la humanidad está en una semilla. Entonces yo digo siempre a las personas, entiéndate como una semilla, porque si tú cambias, el cambio que tú haces, eso la física cuántica no lo aclara, no se queda en la persona solamente. Ese valor que uno vive, la pequeña comunidad vive, se irradia por todas las partes, contamina otros grupos, refuerza esas energías que están en la tierra, que están en la humanidad y que contiene el futuro. Yo sentí falta de Victoria que nos hablara una palabra del Ubuntu. Ubuntu, que es una palabra fundamental. Yo soy yo solamente a través de ti. Es decir, todos estamos interretroconectados. Nadie está fuera de la relación. No existe objetos. Como decía Niels Bohr y Werner Heisenberg, no hay el conjunto de los seres del universo. Hay el conjunto de las relaciones entre todos los seres. Todo es relación y nadie está fuera de la relación. Entonces nosotros somos un nudo de relaciones volcado en todas las direcciones. Y la medida que desarrollamos esas relaciones, ese nudo de relaciones, más nos humanizamos, más entramos en contacto con la tierra, con la comunidad de vida. Y eso yo creo que se está haciendo, por ahí hay futuro y ojalá la humanidad se constituya a partir de esos grupos que tienen esa conciencia y han encontrado una forma de salir de la crisis del sistema global.
Muchísimas gracias, Leonardo, y gracias a cada uno. Yo voy a pedir a cada uno de nuestros panelistas que puedan en un minuto hacer una última reflexión, algo muy breve, porque ya vamos a cerrar. Pero voy a pedir, básicamente aquí voy a compartir esta imagen para todos. No sé si todos ven, ¿verdad?
Lindo.
Todos pueden ver. Vamos a hacer un momento aquí de algunos segundos para mirar la tierra, nuestro hogar. Voy a pedir a nuestros panelistas que en un minuto puedan compartir qué sienten. ¿Qué sienten al ver y al pensar cuál es nuestra casa? Y lo único que nos trae. What is the uniqueness of this planet Earth? And what do you feel about it? So just a minute for all of us to think about that. What do you feel? What do you think of the uniqueness of this beautiful planet Earth that we can call home? Ok, ya vamos a cerrar. Quisiera traer tal vez aquí la última voz de alguien que nos acompaña en el público, María Vilches, quien nos acompaña desde Puerto Rico. María Vilches es parte de nuestro cuerpo docente del Centro Carta de la Tierra en Educación para el Desarrollo Sostenible, que a propósito vamos a empezar un programa, creo que es el 8º año que brindamos el programa de Educación para el Desarrollo Sostenible para fomentar la capacitación de los docentes, y María Vilches es parte del programa. Y María Vilches escribió en el chat box: como señalan nuestros panelistas, es fundamental transformar nuestra visión de mundo a una ecológica, una que promueva nuestra conexión con todo lo que existe. Necesitamos una educación para la vida, que nos impulse a conectarnos con nosotros mismos, con todo lo existente y trascender a niveles más elevados de conciencia. Muchas gracias, María Vilches. Ahora quisiera dar la palabra primero a Victoria y luego vamos a escuchar a cada uno solo un último minuto, si nos puede compartir, Victoria, ¿qué sientes en cuanto a esta belleza de planeta, nuestra casa común? Victoria.
Thank you, Miriam. What I see, or what this is reminding me, is that we are the fabric of our community, and we need to continue to come together to weave together a beautiful fabric for our world, for the people and its planet.
Fabric. Thank you. Bernard?
The image looks a bit like looking into the eyes of somebody. So looking into the eyes of our planet. And basically, I will in part echo what Victoria said. In part, the time is right now. It's the time to learn, to act, to speak, to do for people, for planet, and for all the other living beings on this planet. And the one final reminder is the photo clearly shows us that this is the blue planet, and that we also have to think about the blue, so the water that basically composes all of us, and the water that is quickly disappearing in parts of the world where we have to find solutions. So learn, act now for people, for the planet, for others.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you for reminding us of the blue planet idea. Sam, what do you think and what do you feel when you see the image of our home?
Oh, I feel emotional when I see it. It's just so beautiful, just so beautiful. So I'm struck with the beauty, the absolute beauty of that image. And I'm struck with how alive it seems. Just the feeling of life teeming with diversity and possibility. It's just, it gives me chills. And so I'm left with a feeling of gratitude to even be a speck in the span of time on this beautiful planet. So the last thing is that I realized that photo, that image lives inside of every cell of my body. So I'm a reflection of that image. Every single cell of me is reflecting that, and it's reflecting me. So it makes me feel cosmic. It makes me feel that I'm in space, in this emptiness and this expanse and this infinity that is beyond my understanding and related to the deepest mystery that we're also belong to. So.
Thank you, Sam. Leonardo, what do you feel? What do you think when you see this image?
yo mirando ese globo terrestre tuve la impresión de una grande belleza. Y eso me hizo recordar una frase de Dostoyevsky que dice, la belleza salvará el mundo. La belleza salvará el mundo. En el romance, la narrativa de los hermanos Karamazov, aclara lo que significa eso. La belleza no como una experiencia de pura estética, sino la capacidad de sentir, cuidar del otro. Si sentimos el otro, lo cuidamos, y para él es la belleza como dimensión humana, eso va a salvar el mundo. Yo creo que esa es la llave fundamental, y si me permiten, como teólogo, utilizar una frase de la tradición judío-cristiana que está ahí en el libro de la sabiduría, donde se dice, Dios, el Creador, ha creado todas las cosas con amor. No ha creado ninguna con odio, sino no los había creado. Creó todo por amor, porque Él es apasionado amante de la vida. Apasionado amante de la vida. Entonces, un Dios que es apasionado amante de la vida no va a permitir que nosotros vamos desaparecer tan miserablemente. Vamos a encontrar salidas, tener esperanza, seguimos brillando porque nacimos del corazón de las estrellas y tenemos futuro. Eso todo lo que quería decir.
Muchas gracias, Leonardo. Gracias, Sam, Raul, Victoria, Bernard. Thank you for joining us today, everybody. And for sharing with us your thoughts, your reflections, and your feelings. And I have to say, well, our next webinar will be at the end of June, on the 29th of June, for the day we celebrate the launch of the Earth Charter 23 years ago. But I would like to end with this. We had many people here from China joining us today. We had people from Japan, from India, from different countries in Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Ethiopia. I saw people from Brazil, Mexico, certainly Costa Rica, US, and of course Europe. So I just wanted to end with this. First, be mindful in acknowledging all of you who joined us today. And in celebrating this beautiful and magnificent diversity of contexts that we live in cultures, but at the same time celebrating our sense of oneness in the planet. So with the words that we just heard from Sam, Bernard, and Victoria, and Sam Crowell, Leonardo, Bernard, and Victoria, it came to me the importance for us to foster our sense of beauty, gratitude, awe, and love. So with these words, I would like to end our webinar today. Sorry, we went a little bit over the time, but thinking about these 4.5 billion years of our planet and its beauty, and our role in bringing beauty, gratitude, awe, and love to this planet that we share independently of where we come from, our unique home, Earth, that has a lot of uniqueness. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye. Have a great end of the day or evening, depending on where you are. Yeah. My gratitude.
Gracias. Gracias. Muy bien.